get our very own Ernie Raquepo.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity, Mike and Kim, Danelle, whoever's on the board, for this time that I could speak. My topic tonight is overcoming adversity. And let me share with you what the book of Webster says about adversity. Difficulties and misfortune. But we are giving Jesus Christ, who's our help us overcome. Overcome in the book of Webster. Succeed in dealing with problems and difficulties. So as I look back, I'm not going to start with my past. Where I'm going to start is what the Lord has brought me through, because a lot of you know what my past was. I lived a lifetime before I met the Lord. And I got a redo when I met the Lord. I could think back in the early 90s, rough day at work. I managed a huge tire store. 6 days a week, 7 to 7 was my hours. And I came home one night, and my wife, Donna, we're newlyweds basically, she said, "Do you mind if we eat light tonight?" I said, "No, light's fine." I'm thinking chef salad or something. Jenny Craig microwave popcorn. No butter, no salt. She puts it on the coffee table. She turns on the news for me because I like watching the evening news. And I say to her, "You've got to be kidding me." And I go to kick this thing off the coffee table. And she said, wait. Before you do that, I need to show you something. She walks into the bedroom. She pulls out 5 of my payroll checks. And she said, "Ernie, I sit in that long line at the bank every Monday for that teller to tell me that not one of these checks are any good. But I bet you your boss right now is having steak with his family." And I'd say, "Donna, why didn't you tell me?" She said, "Because you would come home so stressed out at night, I didn't want to stress you out anymore." I said, "But microwave popcorn? It's like styrofoam with no butter or no salt." So the next morning, I called my assistant manager. I said, "Hey, open the store today. I'm going down to the corporate office." "Well, you need an appointment to go in the corporate office." I walk in there with those 5 payroll checks, and I slap it down on the owner's desk, and I say, "You explain to me why I'm eating microwave popcorn for dinner." And he says, "Ernie, I could explain. He said, "This is how I want you to solve the problem. You tell your customers you want them to pay you cash. As you get enough cash, you put one of those paychecks in a drawer." I said, "Nope, I will not inconvenience my customers that way. You make these checks right." That was the first major adversity that my family had to go through. I mean, we had no money. In fact, if you walk into our house, you'll see our wedding invitations. Donor handwritten them out. And one of my cousin's presents was that he had them printed for us, and they're stick figures. And how my 2 kids and her 3 kids blended together as a family. And so anyway, we decide to move up here to Atascadero. We thought, oh man, it's going to be great. There's a lot of churches in Atascadero. We're going to get connected because there's got to be a lot of spiritual people up there because of all the, there's a church at like every street corner just about. Well, we move up here. We don't know anyone. I open up a tire store, and I'm not making any money. I'm the new kid on the block. Donna pulls out of our house there in front of Miners, and her car gets rear-ended. And she walks up to me at the store, and she says, Ernie, are we making any money at all? Because we really need a new car. I said, Donna, I can barely keep the doors open. I said, but let me tell you what I'm going to do. I called A1 Auto Wrecking. She had a silver car. I bought her a black trunk lid, and I slapped that on there, and it opened and shut. I figured, great, you know. I mean, everything was groovy. Well, I was beginning to get fearful because of the fact that we came up here with money in the bank, and it started to dwindle because our business wasn't making hardly anything. And Donna would kick me out in the afternoon, and she'd say, Ernie, go to the golf course and get on a course with 3 people that you could meet, and hopefully we could build our business that way. Well, that time in the afternoon is all high school kids. They don't drive yet. And so, so anyway, I got to know all the high school kids that were golfers. Then I bring my son up, my oldest son, to come to work with me. He was in his later teens. His name was Anthony. And Anthony was going to take over my store when I got old and gray. He learned the business. He was good with my customers. And I'm thinking, great. Now I got somebody that could take over my store. I'm going to play golf 2 or 3 days a week because I'm not making hardly any money anyway. I might as well pay him to learn the business. Anthony got cancer. 18 months, I drove down to Cedars-Sinai every Saturday, pretty much. Donna would try to run the business, and she owned a hair salon. She did run the business. She owned a hair salon, so she knew how to deal with people. She just had to learn product knowledge. Well, what had happened before that, Anthony and I had a big blowout fight. He came back from lunch with one of my front-end techs, and I smelled beer on his breath. I said, Aunt, did you have beer for lunch? He said, Dad, it was just one. We weren't very busy, so I figured it'd be okay. And he says, I broke one of your stupid rules, didn't I? I said, yeah, you kind of did. I said, tell you what, go home, grab your golf clubs, go play around the golf. I don't need you this afternoon. And he said, why? Because I broke one of your stupid rules? I said, Aunt, come on, man. It's like a father-son thing. You know, I'm not mad. I said, just take off for the afternoon. Well, he jumped in his car. I don't hear from the kid for 2 years. Doesn't call me. Doesn't return my calls. I text him. I get nothing. 2 years later, I go to play golf with a good friend. And they call me in the pro shop, and they said, Ernie, your daughter's on the phone. She seems real frazzled. You better take this call. And I mean, I already have my ball teed up. I'm ready to go play. I go in there, and my daughter, Nicole, said, Dad, there's something wrong with Anthony's blood. Can you please come down? I said, where? He said, Cedars-Sinai. They're transporting him to Cedar. I said, well, what's wrong with him? Did he get in an accident? She said, no, there's something wrong with his blood, Dad. So I get down there. My cousin runs the donor department at Cedar. And she said, Anthony has leukemia. It's the worst kind that you could have, and he needs bone marrow. And no one in the family matches. I said, well, let's test me. I didn't match either. And so she said, Ernie, the only hope that he has is that he receives bone marrow. Now you got to remember, I haven't seen Anthony for at least 2 years. I just thought it was just one of those father and son things that father and son sometimes go through. Well, I had him transferred to UCLA Medical Center, and the reason why is because my mom lived in Santa Monica. It gave me a place to stay rather than going to City of Hope. So he and I are sitting in the room one day. Anthony is from my first marriage. My ex-wife's downstairs. And it's just he and I. And he said, hey, Pop, can we talk? I said, sure, let's talk. What's on your mind? He said, that time that we had that blowout at Tire King. I said, dude, you're the one that had the blowout. It wasn't me. I just sent you home to go play golf for the afternoon. And he said, Dad, do you remember when I played Pop Warner football? I said, yeah, I do. You're like 6 or 7. You played for the Redskins. Valencia. He said, yep. And you made it to every game, Dad. But then you became the general manager of that big tire store. I played for Saugus High School. I was all city, Dad. I knew exactly when you walked in the stadium. The dark skin and the white hair. I knew exactly when you walked in the stadium. And he said, guess what? You wouldn't be there. But all the other kids' dads were there. He said, you were just never there for me. It was then that I started hating you. And that's why that happened at the tire shop. Because of all the anger that I had inside. I got to a place where I could only rely on God. Donna and I would pray together. We committed to pray together. All the elders at our church prayed. Every time there was an altar call, I'd be down there at the altar saying, hey, Lord, touch my son. Anyway, 2 weeks later, Anthony's heart gave out. We had do not resuscitate. And I was sitting in there thinking, Lord, I've served you. I'm on the worship team at school. I serve. It was like I'm trying to deal with Monty Hall or something, like, let's make a deal. Well, there was no deal to be made. It was what it was. Now, Heidi, Anthony's fiancée, they were supposed to be married that year. She came down to me in the waiting room. She said, Ernie, if Jesus healed Lazarus, do you think if we pray, he'd heal Anthony? I'd say, Heidi, let's give it a try. I'd already had him unplugged. I knew that his heart wasn't moving or his lungs weren't moving anymore because I had him unplugged off the ventilator. But we sat there and prayed. Heidi had big tears in her eyes. And she asked me, Ernie, if God doesn't raise Anthony, then would you please be strong for me? Because do you remember what I said to you when I came to yours and Donna's house? And I said, yeah, I do remember, Heidi. You said, I'm going to marry that boy one day. And she said, do you remember what your response was? I said, yes. I said, I hope you can keep him that long. She said, I kept him that long. all through the times that he went through all the drugs and hanging out with all the wrong people, I kept him that long. And then he recommitted his life back to the Lord, and then cancer took him. She said, Ernie, I need you to be strong for me. And Anthony, his wishes were that he be buried next to your dad. My dad's buried in Marina Del Rey, Heidi. That's a long truck for you from Quartz Hill. And she said, it's worth it. That's what he wanted. So we found the closest plot to my father. She said, he must have really loved that man. I said, you know, Heidi, I was single at that time. I was very selfish, and I used to drop Anthony and Nicole off at my parents' house so I could go do what I wanted to do. My dad would take them to the park and swing with them and feed the ducks with day-old bread or week-old bread, whatever they had in the house. And she said, my dream was to marry your son, and that's not going to happen. So my wishes are that it be just a visitation and not an open casket, because I do not want anyone to see him the way he looked at the end. My son was a linebacker. I mean, he weighed over 220 pounds. The day he died, he weighed less than 120 pounds. I could literally pick him up with one hand. So at the end, my whole family leaves. Heidi said, I need to open the casket one more time. I said, Heidi, I thought you didn't want that. And she said, no, I need to put the ring in there. I said, Heidi, don't put the engagement ring in there. That's a waste. She said, no, Ernie, I bought him a wedding band last night after he passed away and you had him unplugged. I would like to put that on his finger. And I don't have a piece of paper that says I was married to Anthony. But in my heart, I felt like I'd been married to Anthony for a year. And so I hope you can accept me into your family. Oh my gosh. I started crying like a big dog. I couldn't hold the tears in. We opened the casket. And he's in his Lakers jersey and his LA Raiders at the time sweats and brand new Reebok shoes. Because Anthony wore the whitest of white shoes. So I'm thinking, you know, Lord, I've seen you work. I've seen what happened when Donna's car got rear-ended. And she started praying and fasting that you would supply a car for her. And as I'm picking up this car from North Hollywood, the first thing I say to Donna is, Donna, the next time you pray for a car, pray for something that's more practical. Because what Donna got was a 32 three-window coupe, fully restored. That's worth more than all the vehicles that I own. You see, in 2 Corinthians 4:8, it says, we are hard-pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair, persecuted, but not abandoned, struck down, but not destroyed. You see, we need to know who we are in Christ. We also need to know who Christ is for us. You know, as I was praying this week on what I was going to share on, Lord took me to Revelations. Now, John, he's going through some hard times on Patmos. You talk about adversity. Well, he starts writing to the 7 churches. I mean, these churches were bad mama jammas, man. You know, I mean, they were, I mean, some of them were worship Baal. Some of them were sexual impurities. I mean, there were so many of them that he started writing all these letters. And then I'm reminded what a strong intercession group we have right here in this building and over at the Generals. And it says here in Revelations 2:7, he who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. To him who overcomes, I will give the right to eat from the tree of life, which is paradise with God. See, it's learning to overcome the adversities that we go through sometimes. Me, in the early days, my fear, well, what's on the flip side of fear? Anger. I couldn't get angry at Donna. She's on my side. And I know I couldn't because of the fact that she's probably tougher than I am. But I remember sitting there, we would commit to prayer every night until we started seeing changes in our family, in our ministry. And then I read on in Revelations 2:17. Says, he who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. To him who overcomes, I will give some of the hidden manna. I will also give a white stone with a new name written on it. Now only to him only known to him who receives it. So I'm thinking, there are so many ways to overcome adversity. And our Bible, if you read it, which I don't all the time, I'll be honest with you. You know, I'm still working a lot of hours, but I do when I have to. Yeah, I'm just trying to be real. But when I pray for the women here, the intercession team, he took me to Revelations 2:26. To him who overcomes and does my will to the end, I will give authority over the nations. And that's what the women are so strong about doing, changing our nation here in Atascadero, the Central Coast, and the world. So even though us guys, or husbands, we're so busy working sometimes that we may not be as much of a prayer warrior as our women, we still need to be covering their backs. And guys, remember that our wives, for the ones that are lucky enough to be married and have a spouse, they are not the enemy. So the question I need to ask is, when adversity faces you in the face, what do you do? How do you react? Do you want to just get angry and be mad or blame someone? Or do you want to grab the bull by the horns and go after it? So, I need to tell you that you are victorious. You start from a place of victory, not defeat. So you need to know where your starting place is. Know where your starting place is. If you sit there and feel, woe is me, I'm defeated, wrong place to start. I look at a pastor that I once served under down in San Luis Obispo, and I shared this last Thursday, I think, that when he came in sick and coughing, I would say, Pastor, are you sick? He'd say, nope, I'm catching a healing. He automatically thinks like he's healed. The other day, or a couple weeks ago, Gary shared about healing, on how we can all do that. You see, we are all called to change the nation. It's not what we think the anointed ones are, because we're all anointed. When I first met Donna, she walked by me and painted on jeans, Good old Billy Ocean. But you know what? It wasn't those painted on jeans that I was attracted to. It was the Jesus in Donna that I was attracted to. And you know what? You have Jesus in you as well. People are going to be attracted to the Jesus in you. You can shine and light up a room because of the Jesus in you. And sometimes you could even use words. So anyway, when adversity faces you guys, how do you deal with it?